In the searing heat of August 2015, 34-year-old geologist and amateur photographer Alex Miller drove his modified Jeep Wrangler into the vast, unforgiving expanse of Death Valley National Park. He was on a solo expedition, a personal project to document the unique geological formations of the Badwater Basin and the surrounding Panamint Range. He had told his sister Jessica that he was seeking the kind of profound silence and raw beauty that only the desert could offer. Before we follow the trail of what happened next, and the haunting clues that would later surface, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and leave a like, so more people can help uncover stories like Alex's that time tried to erase. He planned to be off the grid for 5 days, a trip he had meticulously prepared for over several months. He was an experienced outdoorsman, known for his cautious and methodical nature. His vehicle was equipped with extra fuel, water, emergency supplies, and a satellite phone he promised to use for a single check-in on the 3rd day. That check-in never came. When he failed to return to his home in Bishop, California, a week later, Jessica reported him missing. The subsequent search operation was one of the largest in the park's recent history. Park rangers, county sheriffs, and volunteers scoured the labyrinthine canyons and sun-scorched flats. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras swept over the landscape, their rotors beating against the oppressive, silent air. They found nothing. The desert seemed to have swallowed him whole. His tire tracks, identified from a cast Jessica provided, were seen entering the park at the eastern entrance, but were soon lost among the countless other tracks on the dusty, unpaved roads. The satellite phone company reported that the device had never been activated after his departure. After 2 weeks of fruitless searching under a relentless sun, with temperatures regularly soaring above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, the active search was officially suspended. Alex Miller's case went cold, his name added to the somber list of those who had vanished in the stark, beautiful indifference of Death Valley. 7 years later, in October of 2022, a pair of European tourists exploring a remote, seldom-used service road in the southern part of the park stumbled upon a scene that would forever be seared into their memory. Partially obscured by a cluster of creosote bushes sat a sun-bleached Jeep Wrangler, its tires half buried in the accumulated sand. Leaning against the driver's side door, in a seated position as if resting in the shade of the vehicle, was a human body, fully clothed but desiccated by years of exposure to the elements. The keys were still in the ignition. The discovery of the remains, later identified through dental records as Alex Miller, did not close a chapter. It opened a book filled with disturbing and inexplicable questions. He had not been found in a deep canyon or remote wash, but mere yards from a passable road against his own vehicle. He was not miles from his last known location, but in an area that had been part of the initial search grid, an area that search planes had almost certainly flown over. The state of the scene was profoundly unsettling. The doors of the Jeep were unlocked, and inside, investigators found supplies that seemed to defy the narrative of a man lost and dying of thirst. Several gallons of water remained in their containers, and a box of unopened energy bars sat on the passenger seat. The vehicle's gas tank was nearly full, and a preliminary check revealed no obvious mechanical failure. The satellite phone was on the dashboard, its battery long dead, but with no signs of damage. The cause of death was not immediately apparent, but the position of the body was the most perplexing detail of all. He was not slumped over the wheel, nor was he found collapsed on the ground some distance away, as if in a final, desperate search for help. He was seated calmly, almost peacefully, against the truck, in a pose that suggested rest, not a final, agonizing struggle. The ignition was in the on position, the battery drained to nothing, indicating the electronics or radio might have been running until the power gave out. Why would a man with fuel, water, and a functional vehicle sit down to die in its shadow? The Inyo County Sheriff's Department reopened the case, no longer a search for a missing person, but an investigation into a death so strange it bordered on the impossible. The desert had finally given back Alex Miller, but in doing so, it had presented a riddle that seemed to have no earthly answer, a silent tableau of a final moment that made no logical sense. The investigation was handed to Detective Miles Corbin, a veteran of the Inyo County Sheriff's Department with 2 decades of experience. Corbin was a man who understood the desert's deceptive nature, its ability to disorient the mind and break the body. Yet the initial report on the Alex Miller case troubled him deeply. It lacked the usual markers of a desert tragedy. There were no signs of a desperate hike for water, no discarded equipment, no frantic attempt to signal for help. The scene was static, a frozen moment in time that felt profoundly wrong. His first official step was to order a full forensic sweep of the vehicle and the immediate vicinity. The Jeep was carefully transported to the sheriff's secure facility in Independence, a process that took hours to ensure the vehicle and its contents were preserved exactly as they were found. At the scene, forensic technicians mapped the area, collecting soil samples and documenting the position of every object. They noted the absence of any other footprints around the vehicle, save for those of the tourists who had made the discovery. It was as if Alex had driven to that exact spot, stepped out of his car, sat down, and never moved again. The years of wind and sand had erased any other tracks, leaving only the baffling final scene. Back in the lab, the contents of the Jeep were cataloged. A high-end digital camera was found in its bag on the back seat. Its memory card was intact. A laptop computer, also in its case, was next to it. In the glove compartment, Corbin's team found a series of detailed geological maps of the area, marked with Alex's precise handwriting. Several locations were circled in red ink, but the spot where he was found was not one of them. It was miles away from any of his intended survey points. The autopsy was conducted by the county medical examiner, Dr. Alistair Reed. The report confirmed what was already obvious. The remains were extensively mummified due to the arid conditions. There were no signs of physical trauma, no broken bones, no bullet wounds or knife marks. There was also no evidence of animal predation beyond some minor insect activity, which was unusual in itself. The desert scavengers, coyotes and vultures, had seemingly left the body untouched. Toxicology reports would take weeks, but toxicology. Reed's preliminary conclusion listed the cause of death as undetermined, with a strong possibility of hyperthermia and dehydration, despite the presence of water in the vehicle. Reed noted a peculiar detail: the clothing Alex wore. A long-sleeved hiking shirt and durable pants showed no signs of being torn or removed. This was significant because victims of severe hyperthermia often exhibit a behavior known as paradoxical undressing, tearing off their clothes in a final, delirious state as their brain misinterprets temperature signals. Alex had remained fully clothed, another piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. Detective Corbin then turned his attention to the digital evidence. The camera's memory card was the first priority. It contained over 200 high-resolution photographs. The first series of images were exactly what one would expect: stunning, professionally composed shots of rock formations, salt flats, and desert landscapes. The timestamps on the photos created a clear timeline of his journey into the park. He had spent the first 2 days exploring the areas he had marked on his maps. The photos were methodical, taken at different times of day to capture the changing light. They were the work of a man who was focused, calm, and in his element. Then the gallery of images took an abrupt and unsettling turn. The last 30 photos were different. They were all taken on the third day of his trip, the day he was supposed to make his check-in call. They were no longer of landscapes. They were all aimed back at the interior of his own Jeep, taken from the driver's seat. Some were blurry, as if taken in haste. They showed the dashboard, the gear stick, the passenger seat, the satellite phone sitting silently on its mount. The final 3 photographs were the most disturbing. They were taken after sunset, in near total darkness. The first was a pitch-black frame. The second showed the faint, eerie glow of the dashboard lights. The final image on the card, time-stamped just after 2 a.m., was a long exposure shot of the windshield. It was blurry and chaotic, but through the glass, 2 faint points of light were visible in the distant, black emptiness of the desert night. They were too steady and too close together to be stars. They looked like eyes, or perhaps the headlights of another vehicle, impossibly far away in a place where no other vehicles should have been. Corbin stared at the image on his monitor, the 2 pinpricks of light burning in the digital darkness. The strange, silent scene in the desert had just been given a voice, and it spoke of fear. The meticulous geologist, calm and prepared, had spent his final hours not exploring the rocks, but documenting something from within the confines of his vehicle, something that had appeared in the dead of night. The case had shifted from a perplexing mystery to something far more sinister. The 2 points of light in Alex Miller's final photograph became the focal point of Detective Corbin's investigation. He brought in a forensic imaging specialist to analyze the file. The specialist confirmed Corbin's suspicion that the photo was a long exposure shot, likely several seconds long, which accounted for some of the blurriness from the movement of the camera in Alex's hands. By enhancing the image and analyzing the pixel data, the specialist was able to determine that the lights were not a reflection or a lens flare. They were an external light source located at a significant distance, estimated to be between a half-mile and a mile away. Furthermore, the light was not consistent with standard vehicle headlights. The spectral analysis suggested a warmer, more yellowish hue than modern halogen or LED lamps, and the positioning was slightly off. They were too close together and seemed to be at different heights, an asymmetry that was puzzling. Corbin cross-referenced the location where the Jeep was found with park records and satellite maps from 2015. There were no official roads, no mining claims, and no designated campsites in the direction of the lights. It was a desolate, empty quarter of the park. The possibility that another vehicle was out there was remote, but not impossible. The park was vast, and illegal off-roading, while rare, did happen. The question was, what would another vehicle be doing in that specific, barren location in the middle of the night? Simultaneously, Corbin began a deep dive into Alex Miller's life, searching for anything that might explain his presence in that remote spot and his strange final hours. He drove to Bishop to speak with Alex's sister, Jessica. In her quiet, grief-stricken home, she painted a picture of a brother who was brilliant, solitary, and deeply passionate about his work. She confirmed that he was meticulous in his planning and not a risk-taker. When Corbin asked if Alex had any enemies or was involved in anything illegal, she was adamant that it was impossible. He was a man of science, she said, a man who found his church in the layers of the earth. She did, however, provide a potentially crucial piece of information. A few weeks before his trip, Alex had become unusually secretive about his work. He had always shared his plans and discoveries with her, but this time he was vague. He mentioned he was on the verge of a significant find, something related to rare mineral deposits. He had been using his own savings to fund his trips, and he spoke of this one as the one that could change everything. Jessica recalled him spending late nights on his computer, looking at satellite images and old mining surveys. She thought it was just his usual passion, but in retrospect, his intensity seemed different, more like an obsession. Corbin obtained a warrant to access Alex's home computer, which had been sealed as part of the initial missing person case. The digital forensics team created an image of the hard drive and began sifting through years of data. They found what Jessica had described, extensive research into the geology of Death Valley, but hidden within a password-protected folder, they found something else. The folder contained a collection of digitized historical documents, a handwritten journal from a 19th century prospector, a series of faded survey maps from the 1930s, and correspondence with a retired geologist from the U.S. Geological Survey. Corbin spent the next few days poring over the documents. The prospector's journal spoke of a vein of sunstone hidden in a canyon where the rock weeps. It was filled with cryptic, almost poetic descriptions of landmarks. The 1930s maps were even more intriguing. They depicted an area of the park that was now designated as wilderness, but the map showed a small, abandoned mining operation labeled only as the Glimmer Field. The location of this Glimmer Field was inconsistent across the different maps, as if its true position was deliberately obscured. The correspondence with the retired geologist revealed that Alex had been asking about this old legend. The geologist had dismissed it as a myth, a tall tale from the days of the gold rush, but Alex, it seemed, had not been convinced. Using the prospector's clues and the old maps, he had been triangulating a possible location for this lost mine. On Alex's computer, the forensics team found a final, unsent email addressed to his sister. In the draft, he wrote, "Jess, I think I found it. The geology matches the old descriptions. It's not a myth. Headed out tomorrow. Don't tell anyone where I'm going. This one needs to be quiet. The email was dated the day before he left for Death Valley. Corbin overlaid Alex's projected route with the location of the glimmer field from the old maps. It was a near-perfect match. Alex hadn't been on a simple photography trip. He had been on a secret, modern-day treasure hunt. And the place where he believed this lost mine was located was in the same remote, desolate area where his Jeep was eventually found, and in the same direction as the mysterious lights in his final photograph. The mystery of why he was there was now solved. But the nature of the lights and the reason for his calm, inexplicable death remained shrouded in the desert's oppressive silence. The discovery of Alex Miller's secret quest for the glimmer field shifted the entire focus of the investigation. Detective Corbin now operated on the theory that Alex had not been alone in the desert. The lights in the photograph were likely connected to his search and possibly to his death. The question was whether he had found what he was looking for, and if so, who else knew about it. Corbin requested a comprehensive geological survey of the area where Alex was found, specifically looking for unusual mineral deposits. He also tasked his team with cross-referencing all known mining claims, both active and defunct, within a 50-mile radius. It was a monumental task, sifting through a century's worth of bureaucratic records. But Corbin suspected the answer lay buried in the paper, not just the sand. While that slow process unfolded, Corbin turned his attention back to the physical evidence. The autopsy had been inconclusive, but the toxicology reports had finally come back. They contained a startling finding. In addition to severe dehydration, the tests revealed trace amounts of a powerful, fast-acting sedative in Alex's system, a benzodiazepine derivative not commonly prescribed and difficult to detect. The amount was small, not enough to be lethal on its own, but it would have been more than sufficient to induce a state of confusion, drowsiness, and impaired judgment. Combined with the extreme heat of the desert, it would have been a deadly cocktail, accelerating the onset of hyperthermia and preventing him from taking rational steps to save himself, like drinking the water that was just feet away. This was the smoking gun. Alex Miller's death was no longer a mystery of the elements. It was a homicide. Someone had drugged him. The serene, almost peaceful scene of his death was a lie. It was a staged scene, designed to look like another tragic story of a hiker underestimating the desert. The presence of the sedative explained his inaction, his failure to drink water, to use the satellite phone, to even move from his spot. He had been incapacitated, left to die slowly and quietly as the desert sun did the killer's work. The 2 points of light in the photograph now took on a terrifying new significance. They were not just a strange anomaly. They were likely the last thing Alex saw before he was drugged. He had been watching them, or they had been watching him. Corbin's team redoubled their efforts on the digital front. They analyzed the metadata of the final photos more closely. They found that Alex had been repeatedly adjusting the camera's focus, trying to get a clearer shot of the distant lights. He had switched from automatic to manual focus, a clear sign of a photographer struggling to capture a difficult subject. He was not just snapping pictures in a panic, he was trying to document, to gather evidence. This suggested that he was aware of a threat, that he knew he was in danger. The investigation into the mining claims finally yielded a breakthrough. A junior analyst found a record for a small, exploratory claim filed just 6 months before Alex's trip. The claim was for a remote section of land that overlapped with the area Alex had identified as the potential location of the glimmer field. The name on the claim was a shell corporation, Panamint Resources, LLC, with a mailing address that led to a post office box in Las Vegas. Digging into the corporate registration documents, they found the name of the sole registered agent, a man named Marcus Thorne. A background check on Thorne revealed a history that was both impressive and troubling. He was a geologist, just like Alex, but his career had taken a different path. After being fired from a major mining corporation for alleged data theft, he had become a freelance consultant, specializing in identifying and acquiring mineral rights for private investors. He had a reputation for being ruthless and operating in a legal gray area. More importantly, his name had appeared in Alex's digital correspondence. In an email exchange with the retired USGS geologist, Alex had mentioned Thorne's name, asking if he was reputable. The retired geologist had warned him to stay away, stating that Thorne was more prospector than scientist, and had a history of disputes over claims. Corbin now had a prime suspect. Marcus Thorne had the motive, the means, and the opportunity. He was a geologist who would have understood the legend of the Glimmer Field and had the expertise to locate it. He had filed a claim on the exact same area Alex was exploring. It was highly probable that Thorne had been in the desert at the same time as Alex, that the lights in the photograph belonged to his vehicle or campsite, and that he had seen Alex as a rival threatening to expose his discovery. The theory was simple and brutal. Thorne had found the lost mine. Alex, using his own research, had stumbled upon the same location. Thorne couldn't risk a competing claim or the attention Alex might bring. So he confronted him, drugged him, and then staged the scene, making it look like Alex had simply succumbed to the heat. He had taken advantage of the desert's reputation as a killer to commit the perfect murder, leaving no witnesses and an environment that would erase all evidence. Finding proof, however, would be another matter. Thorne was smart and would have covered his tracks. Corbin knew he couldn't just confront him with a 7-year-old photograph and the trace of sedative in a long-dead victim. He needed something concrete, something that directly linked Thorne to that spot in the desert at that specific time and to the drug found in Alex's system. The investigation now had a clear target, and the desolate landscape of Death Valley had become the silent witness to a calculated and cold-blooded crime. Detective Corbin's focus now centered entirely on Marcus Thorne. He knew that a direct confrontation would be futile. Thorne was too clever to be caught by a simple interrogation. Instead, Corbin decided to build a case from the outside in, starting with Thorne's activities in 2015. He obtained warrants for Thorne's financial records, phone records, and email accounts from that year. The data trickled in slowly, and for weeks, Corbin and his team meticulously pieced together a timeline of Thorne's life around the time of Alex's disappearance. The financial records showed that in the months leading up to August 2015, Thorne had purchased a significant amount of specialized mining equipment, including ground-penetrating radar and assay kits. He had also made a cash purchase of a used, heavy-duty pickup truck, one capable of handling extreme off-road conditions. His phone records were even more revealing. Using cell tower triangulation data, they were able to place Thorne's phone in the vicinity of Death Valley during the exact same week Alex was there. The signal was lost for a 3-day period, consistent with him being in a remote area of the park with no service, before reappearing near the small town of Beatty, Nevada. The date the signal reappeared was the day after the timestamp on Alex Miller's final photograph. It was a powerful circumstantial link. While this data was being analyzed, Corbin sent a team to Las Vegas to discreetly investigate the shell corporation, Panamint Resources, LLC. They found that the corporation had been dissolved in 2017. However, before it was dissolved, it had sold its single asset, the mining claim in Death Valley, to a larger international mining conglomerate for a substantial sum of money. Marcus Thorne had personally signed the transfer documents. He hadn't just found the Glimmer Field, he had successfully and quietly sold it, making a fortune from the discovery that had likely cost Alex Miller his life. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. While reviewing the contents of Alex's Jeep for a third time, a crime scene technician noticed something odd about the satellite phone. Tucked deep inside the battery compartment, underneath the battery itself, was a tiny, folded piece of paper. It was a receipt from a pharmacy in Las Vegas, dated 2 days before Alex began his trip. The receipt was for a single prescription, filled for a name that was not Alex Miller's. The name on the prescription was Marcus Thorne, and the medication prescribed was a potent benzodiazepine, the same class of drug found in Alex's toxicology report. Corbin stared at the small slip of paper. It was the linchpin, the undeniable physical link between Thorne, the drug, and Alex. But how did it get there? The theory they developed was chillingly plausible. During the confrontation, Thorne must have drugged a bottle of water or a flask of coffee that he offered to Alex. In the process, the receipt must have fallen out of his pocket and into Alex's open gear bag or onto the seat of the Jeep. In his haste to leave the scene, Thorne overlooked it. Alex, perhaps in a moment of lucidity before the drug took full effect, or simply while packing his gear, must have found the receipt. Realizing its importance but too disoriented to use the phone or escape, He had hidden it in the one place he thought it might be safe and undiscovered, inside the satellite phone. It was his final, desperate act, a message to the future, a clue left for whoever would eventually find him. Armed with this new evidence, Detective Corbin finally had what he needed. He, along with two other detectives, drove to Scottsdale, Arizona, where Marcus Thorne now lived in a luxurious home paid for by the profits of his secret sale. When they arrived, Thorne was calm and collected, inviting them inside with the polished confidence of a successful businessman. He denied ever being in Death Valley in 2015 and claimed to have never heard of Alex Miller. His composure only began to crack when Corbin laid out the evidence, piece by piece. The cell phone records placing him in the park, the financial records of the equipment purchase, the dissolved Shell Corporation, the sale of the mining claim. Thorne paled, his confident facade crumbling. The final blow came when Corbin placed the small, crumpled pharmacy receipt on the polished marble countertop. He informed Thorne that the drug listed on the receipt prescribed to him was the same drug found in the body of Alex Miller. Thorne stared at the receipt, his face a mask of disbelief and shock. He said nothing. After a long, tense silence, he simply stated that he wanted a lawyer. Marcus Thorne was arrested and charged with the murder of Alex Miller. During the trial, his defense argued that the evidence was purely circumstantial. They claimed Thorne was in the area for his own legitimate prospecting and that his presence was a coincidence. They argued the receipt could have been planted. But the prosecution presented a compelling narrative, weaving together the digital evidence, the financial trail, and the damning physical clue of the receipt. They painted a picture of a ruthless operator who had eliminated a rival to secure a multi-million-dollar discovery. The jury agreed. After a 3-week trial, Marcus Thorne was found guilty of first-degree murder. The verdict brought a somber sense of closure to Jessica Miller. She had finally learned the truth about her brother's last days. He had not died because of a mistake or because of the desert's cruelty. He had died because of human greed. He had been murdered for his discovery, a discovery he had pursued with scientific passion. Detective Corbin closed the file on the Alex Miller case, but the images from the desert never truly left him. The image of a man sitting peacefully against his truck, a scene so carefully staged to conceal a brutal crime, was a testament to the cold calculation of the killer. And the final photograph Alex had taken, the two faint lights in the vast darkness, remained a haunting epitaph. A final, silent testimony from a man who, even as his life was being stolen, tried to show the world the face of the evil that had found him in the heart of the great silent desert. The conviction of Marcus Thorne provided the legal conclusion to the death of Alex Miller. But the full story of what transpired in those remote desert canyons in August of 2015 could only be reconstructed through the evidence and Thorne's eventual, albeit limited, pre-sentencing confessions to his cellmates, which were later reported to prosecutors. Thorne, it turned out, had been tracking the legend of the Glimmer Field for years, just like Alex. Using his corporate resources and connections, he had acquired the same old maps and journals and had come to the same conclusions. When he filed his exploratory claim, he began quietly surveying the area, using unmarked vehicles and operating only at night to avoid detection by park rangers or other prospectors. He had set up a small, clandestine camp in a hidden wash, which is what the 2 points of light in Alex's photograph were, the lanterns from Thorne's campsite. On that fateful night, Thorne was alerted to Alex's presence by the distant headlights of his Jeep. Panicked that his secret discovery was about to be compromised, Thorne drove out to intercept him. He found Alex taking nighttime photographs, excited by some initial geological readings he had taken. Thorne approached him not with aggression, but with professional courtesy. He introduced himself as a fellow geologist and feigned surprise at seeing someone else in such a remote area. He listened as Alex, in his excitement, spoke of his research and his belief that he was close to a major find. Thorne, knowing he was standing on the very land he had claimed, made a calculated decision. He couldn't scare Alex off. The man was too determined and had done too much research. He couldn't risk Alex reporting his findings and creating a public record that could jeopardize his claim and the quiet, lucrative sale he was planning. So, under the guise of camaraderie, He offered Alex a drink from his thermos coffee laced with a crushed-up sedative pill from the prescription he carried for anxiety. He told investigators later that he only intended to incapacitate Alex, to scare him a little, perhaps to sabotage his vehicle and leave him stranded for a day to teach him a lesson about prospecting on another man's claim. But he had misjudged the dosage and catastrophically underestimated the synergistic effect of the drug with the extreme desert heat. After Alex drank the coffee, he quickly became disoriented and weak. Thorne guided him out of the Jeep and sat him down against the door, telling him to rest. He then set about staging the scene. He made sure the water and food were visible inside the Jeep. He left the keys in the ignition and turned it to the on position to drain the battery, ensuring the radio couldn't be used. He took Alex's satellite phone, but in his haste, he failed to notice the small receipt that had likely fallen from his pocket during the initial confrontation. He pocketed the phone and drove away, believing Alex would either be found in a day or two by a patrol and be written off as another careless tourist, or that the desert would claim him entirely, leaving no evidence at all. He never anticipated that Alex, in a final act of cognitive effort before the sedative fully overwhelmed him, would find that receipt and have the presence of mind to hide it. Thorne watched from a distance for a day, ensuring Alex did not recover. When he saw that Alex had not moved, he knew his miscalculation had become a fatality. He then packed up his camp and left the park, driving back to Nevada to begin the process of selling the claim. He was confident that he had committed a murder that could never be proven, using the most powerful and unforgiving accomplice imaginable, Death Valley itself. The successful prosecution was a landmark case for Inyo County, a complex web of digital forensics, historical research, and old-fashioned detective work. It served as a stark reminder that even in the most desolate places on Earth, human malice could be the most dangerous element of all. The Glimmerfield, the mythical vein of sunstone that had lured two brilliant geologists into the desert, was eventually developed by the conglomerate that purchased it. It yielded a modest but profitable amount of colemanite, a valuable industrial mineral. Its beauty and its legend were ultimately converted into monetary value, a treasure that was paid for with a human life. Jessica Miller established a foundation in her brother's name, funding scholarships for geology students and promoting safe practices for desert exploration. She ensured that Alex's legacy would be one of science and caution, not tragedy. The story of Alex Miller became a quiet legend in the communities surrounding Death Valley, a cautionary tale whispered among prospectors and park rangers. It was the story of a man who solved a historical mystery and was killed for his success, and of a murderer who believed he could use the vast, silent desert to hide his crime, only to be undone by a tiny slip of paper and the relentless pursuit of a determined detective. The desert, which had held its secret for 7 long years, had ultimately revealed the truth, proving that it was not the killer, but merely the silent, unforgiving stage for a crime born of pure human greed.